Today we're continuing in the series I'm calling the Jubilean Mysteries, and they begin with the ancient law of the Jubilees we just read. That was the beginning of it. And in this we'll see the amazingness of God and the truth of His Word and His hand in human history, even in modern times, and it will ultimately go up to our day, even linked to the president, Israel, all that. And ultimately these things are linked to His coming. And we all are to know the signs of His times. And this is going to be linked to the end times in Bible prophecy. In the last series that we did, or the last message of the series, we looked at the mystery behind, if you remember, President Truman and the link to Cyrus. Today we look at someone also who was famous in a different way, but one of the pivotal people of the 20th century. And even more pivotal concerning the resurrection of the nation of Israel. And we're going to see a mystery in this, and even encoded in a law over 3,000 years old. The Jubilee was the year of restoration, the 50th year, where if you lost your ancestral land in the year of Jubilee, you go home. You return to your land. The land returns to you, and you are returning to the land, and everything is restored. The year Jubilee is the year of restoration and return. So once every 50 years in the land. But we're seeing there's a prophetic, cosmic meaning here, or realm of this, because there's one nation beyond all nations that has lost its ancestral land. More than any nation has lost a land or lost its possession, and that nation is Israel. The same nation that God gave the law of the Jubilees to. In 70 AD, the Roman army drove them out of their holy city, Jerusalem, destroyed it, destroyed the land, ultimately dispersed them into the land. They went into exile for 2,000 years. That's why you have Jewish people in America from that day that Rome came in. And it was all prophesied. Messiah, Jesus prophesied it. Moses prophesied it. So for the people of Israel, the prophecies ultimately didn't end there. It said that, yet in the end times, God said, I will gather you back to the land. And Israel will become a nation again, will be resurrected. And so for the people of Israel to come back to the land, they're coming back to their ancestral possession. So it's a jubilee. It's a prophetic jubilee. They're coming back. They're being restored just as in the jubilee. And what we've been seeing is that the timing of the Jubilee has been linked to all these key events, even up to our time. When all these things happen, it's linked to the Jubilee. The timing, but it's not just the timing. There are mysteries behind this whole thing. Now, in the late 1940s, there was a different kind of Jubilee. If you remember that I told you about the visionary father of Israel. His name was Theodore Herzl, the man who had the vision. This is the man who, when he was a child, had a dream that the Messiah spoke of him and said, I've appointed this child to go to my people and tell them I am coming. So prepare the way. And he's the one who was linked before anybody to the vision of Israel coming back. So God uses all those things. But he gathered a Congress together called the First Zionist Congress, and he wrote in his diary, his journal, at the end of that Congress, he said, listen, within 50 years, the whole world will know about this. Right now, nobody knows. They'll take it as a joke that they'll ever be in Israel. But within 50 years, it will be. Well, if you count 50 years, that was in 1897, it takes you to the year 1947. 1947 is the year that the United Nations voted Israel back into the world. But it goes even more, because when you look at it, the very last day, the day that they came up with a plan, they finished the plan that was called the Partition Plan that would give birth to Israel, a Jewish nation. And so on that, for the first time, the world saw that. The day that they finished that plan was 50 years to the day that Congress ended. 50 years to the day. But I looked even deeper, and there's a day that the United Nations received it, and they into the General Assembly, and they marked it, officially recorded the plan. They put the date on the plan, and the date was September 3rd. 50 years before that, on September 3rd, that's the date when Herzl gave the prophecy. To the day, 50, again, Jubilee, 50, a different kind, but there it is, special one. So, there it is. Israel's rebirth wasn't so much a rebirth, really it was, but it was a resurrection. It was a nation that had been dead, and God is raising it from the dead. Remember, Ezekiel saw a vision of the dry bones, and he saw the bones that was Israel and the soldiers dead, and he said, speak to these bones, and he does, and the Spirit comes, and they start coming together and forming skeletons, and then they come to their feet, and they have flesh on them, and then the Spirit comes on them. And he said, this is the nation of Israel. And so this Israel, what happened in the 20th century, some of you were alive at the time, was a literal resurrection. Nations are born, but Israel was resurrected. From the ancient dead Israel, it came alive again in the modern world. And so the Israeli soldier who died in the first century in the Battle of Rome was now resurrected. Now there was new Israeli soldiers. They're resurrection of the old ones. You had Israeli farmers there. They were wiped out. Now you had Israeli farmers again. The resurrection of the land itself was resurrected. It was a land that had farms and fields and vineyards, but now it's been wiped out, desolate for 2,000 years. All of a sudden, now the land is resurrecting. You have fields again. You have vineyards where they were before. You have forests where they were before. Then you had the cities that were wiped out in the beginning of the age. Now the cities are being resurrected. The same cities, same names are being resurrected. The ancient language of Hebrew, which had been dead for 2,000 years, actually more than that, all of a sudden the language is resurrected. Everything is resurrected. You see, when you see a nation follows its king, the king of Israel is Jesus, Yeshua. He was resurrected, so Israel's resurrected. That's how God does it.
To find out how you can receive more of Jonathan's teachings, to receive special free gifts, or get in touch, go to hopeoftheworld.org or call toll-free 1-800-YESHUA-1. That's hopeoftheworld.org. or call 1-800-YESHUA-1. That's 1-800-937-4821. You can also get more at Jonathan Cahn's Facebook page or write us direct at Hope of the World, Box 1111, Lodi, New Jersey 07644, USA.